Hey everybody, happy Friday. Welcome to another edition of Meet Up with Mallory. This is the virtual coffee hours that we do every single week that the Senate is in session. I am State Senator Mallory McMorrow. We are going to give you an update on state news, an update from the Capitol on legislative news, our new favorite segment, Good News, where you'll hear good news from around the district, and then open it up for live Q&A. So we are live streaming across Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube. So welcome to everybody who's joining us from different platforms. If you have a question or you want to make a comment, you can type in the comment section from any of those platforms and it will funnel to Liz on our staff who will read them. So if you have a question, just put your name in case that's not obvious by your screen name, what city you are typing in or commenting from, and then go ahead and ask your question. So we will get right into it because I know people want to get outside before it is too blazing hot to be out there. So jumping in first to statewide news, I'm going to go ahead and share my screen with you guys. First up, beginning Tuesday, June 1st, Michigan residents saw capacity limits and restrictions in our state lifted, which is great news. So as of Tuesday, there are no longer capacity limits on any outdoor events, which is fantastic. I know a lot of graduations and outdoor celebrations are coming up, so that is fantastic news. There are no longer capacity limits at residential gatherings. Indoor establishments are able to reach 50% capacity. And social gatherings will now only be regulated by the venue. So this is something that we have talked about quite a bit where people have questions about different restaurants, different places. My advice, check in with the business that you're going to and always keep a mask in your pocket. This was something that I will be honest with you, it took a little bit of adjusting to get back to not wearing a mask, updated with CDC guidance. But I've already left my office without one in my pocket and had to go back and grab one. So keep a mask on you and follow whatever rules are set by each individual establishment, and just be respectful of others as always. And then face masks continue to be required for non-vaccinated individuals indoors. And again, this is a shift in mentality where for the past 15 months during the pandemic, we really got into the habit of I wear a mask to protect you, you wear a mask to protect me. But now we're really in this space where vaccinated individuals, according to all of the latest research from the CDC, are protected. It is those who are unvaccinated who now have to look out for themselves. So it's a change in mentality. But if you haven't gotten your vaccine yet, make sure to wear a mask so that you are protected as well, and get that vaccine. We'll talk about that in a little bit. So as we move forward, we're getting into summer. There are more events. The good news is that beginning July 1st, all broad epidemic orders will be lifted. This has been a long year and a half for all of us, but it is really, truly starting to feel like we are getting back to some semblance of normal. I was talking to a few people this week where it kind of feels like it's snuck up on us. And I think psychologically, there wasn't an end marker. It's not like we had a ticker tape parade and we said, okay, pandemic is done. But it is really, really, really wonderful to start to be able to get back out and see people and see friends. I am looking forward to, there's an event coming up. Ferndale Pride is kicking off, and our Attorney General Dana Nessel will be guest bartending at Ferndale Project, which is a great outdoor patio. So I'm looking forward to trying to pop over there tomorrow and see people and get outside and celebrate and take Noah somewhere outdoors, which is going to be really exciting. All right, so moving into kind of updates on where we're at with the vaccines. This week, we saw a 3.21% 7-day positive average. This is a new low for us, which is fantastic. So it is showing how effective these vaccines are. The positivity rate is dropped and has remained consistent nationwide. We were seeing a huge decline in cases from April, where we were seeing some of the highest numbers during the pandemic. So we had that last spike, but now we are coming down to levels that we haven't seen since March of 2020. So the early days of the pandemic when cases were climbing, we are now at that low point, coming down the backside of the hill, which is some good news. But for those who haven't gotten vaccinated yet, I know there are still people holding out. It's super, super easy. So I want to show you this again, vaccines.gov. If you don't know about it, I know that every single person knows somebody either in their family, friend circle, or acquaintances who just hasn't gotten their vaccine yet, not because they are necessarily opposed to the vaccine, but because it's just not on the top of your radar. For a long time, it was really hard to get an appointment. It was hard to kind of figure out where your place in the line was. We saw the mass vaccination clinic down at Ford Field that has since closed, that ran for 8 weeks, but it could not be easier now to get a vaccine. Everybody is eligible. So if you know that person who's just like, I'll get around to it, help them out. Help them find a vaccine, help them find a clinic near you. So I want to walk through how to use this again because it's super, super easy. So go to vaccines.gov, click on Find COVID-19 Vaccines. You can select if you've got a preference. Maybe you just want the J&J, you want one and done. You're like, I don't want to go back for a second one. Or you want to support West Michigan and get the Pfizer one. You can select that too, but let's just keep all three selected just in case. I will put in my zip code. What's up, Royal Oak? And 25 miles, that feels like still a pretty long drive. So let's drop it down to within 5 miles of my house. So put in your zip code, 5-mile radius, search for vaccines. So many options. Holy crap. So go on here. You can find places that it shows you that they're in stock. It shows you where it's out of stock. So you can make sure that you're not going to some place that doesn't have any in stock right now. You don't want to miss a trip. And a lot of places are available for walk-in right now. So check it out, vaccines.gov. You don't have to make an appointment many times, but go on, get your vaccine, get a friend a vaccine, get that family member a vaccine, especially if you've got somebody younger in your household in that 12 to 15 age group who's eligible now. We know a lot of our schools are doing vaccine clinics, but just in case they're not running one in your school or somebody, here's a great way to find a vaccine near you and get that up. As of June 3rd, 59.2% of Michiganders have received at least one shot. And I know Oakland County is significantly higher than that. So way to go, Oakland County, keep it up. And we see how effective that is. And it's just so awesome to see people out and about again. Jumping into our next segment, updates from the Capitol. Today is Gun Violence Awareness Day, and June is Gun Violence Awareness Month. And I want to show this. I introduced a resolution for the third year in a row. I've introduced this resolution to recognize June as Gun Violence Awareness Month. And for the third year in a row, this resolution was referred to the GovOps committee. This is commonly known as the committee where bills go to die. So it is really disappointing that for the third year in a row, this wasn't taken up, but I want to share my floor speech so you can hear what I said, trying to get this resolution introduced and adopted once again. Today, I stand here for the third year in a row to speak on a resolution to declare June as Gun Violence Awareness Month. And today, for the third year in a row, that resolution was referred to the Government Operations Committee where it will surely die. Early in the pandemic, there was a sense that an unintended positive consequence of the efforts to slow the spread of COVID-19 was that it seemed like we were seeing a drastic drop in gun violence. With more people staying at home and fewer people out and about, it seemed like we weren't hearing.
Please proceed, Senator.
It seems like we weren't hearing about the mass shootings, school shootings, or any of the other horrific headlines that have become so commonplace over the past few decades. But that feeling hit a much darker reality. 2020 was the deadliest gun violence year in decades, and 2021 is shaping up to be no different. In my own community in Clawson, in March of this year, a 15-year-old girl was shot and killed by her stepfather during a domestic abuse incident that led to an hours-long standoff with police from multiple cities and the Oakland County SWAT team after the man barricaded himself in the home. A GoFundMe set up to honor Kaylin said that she was a friend to many. Truly, this is a parent's worst nightmare. After senseless violence, Kaylin passed away protecting her mother and her siblings. A post by Clawson Schools said that she believed there were no obstacles she could not overcome or find another way around. This story barely became a blip on the radar. What once would have dominated headlines for weeks became just another in a long line of stories that we hear day after day after day after day. In 2020, gun violence killed nearly 20,000 Americans, more than any other year in the past 2 decades. An additional 24,000 people died by suicide with a firearm. And as more of us return to our communities and public spaces, so too have the horrific national headlines. A mass shooting at spas in Atlanta targeting many of Asian descent. A mass shooting at a grocery store in Colorado that killed 18. a mass shooting at a party in Miami, a mass shooting at a rail yard, a mass shooting at a FedEx facility. So far in 2021, there have been an average of 10 mass shootings around the country per week, and there are only 13 states.
May you please have quiet in the chamber?
And there are only 13 states who haven't seen a mass shooting within their borders in 2021. I was listening to a story on my drive home yesterday with a reporter who said that it may feel like the weight of this increase hasn't been driven home because so many of these incidences of violence are happening outside of the national headlines. They're domestic violence events, family killing family, shootings in local stores or gatherings, or suicide. Have we become so numb that these stories no longer register? And what do we do when we recognize that we have become numb? That nobody in this room is actually listening to these stories? That everybody is too occupied with their phones, with social media, or what else may be going on? What does it mean when these stories no longer register the way that they did after Columbine or Virginia Tech or Sandy Hook? We can't become numb. It breaks my heart that 3 years of introducing this resolution and this body refuses to even recognize or acknowledge that gun violence is not only an issue, but an epidemic. That we just accept that this is part of life in this state, in our communities, and in America. And that we refuse to do even the bare minimum. In too many communities and for too many people, gun violence has become just another part of the daily experience. More than 100 Americans are killed every single day by gun violence. Failing to focus on these more common forms of gun violence obscures the severity of this very real crisis. We cannot allow ourselves to become numb when so many people are continuing to die every single day from senseless gun violence. I'd like my remarks printed. So I think one of the things that was so disappointing about this, and you heard me mention this in my speech on the floor, was that as I was giving this speech and sharing just one of the horrifying stories that we know happens every single day around gun violence, that colleagues in my chamber, people that I work with every single day, could not be bothered to listen. You heard the lieutenant governor had to gavel people down twice. And as I looked around the room, everybody, especially those on the other side of the aisle, not some of those who serve right next to me, were looking at their phone, talking to their friends, talking to colleagues, talking to staff, and could not even be bothered to listen. So this is something that I'm going to keep pushing for. And it's just a sad commentary on the state of Michigan that we can't even coalesce in the legislature around declaring gun violence is an issue. We can talk about the solutions, we can talk about potential ideas moving forward, but if we don't all agree that gun violence is wrong, that losing 20,000 Americans to gun violence every year is wrong, that losing 24,000 Americans to suicide is wrong, and losing kids to gun violence is wrong, then I don't know how we move forward. So I wanted to share that. It was and continues to be every year a really hard day to serve in the Senate and see how little regard so many of our colleagues have for this issue. But that doesn't mean that we're not going to keep trying. And for everybody who advocates on this issue and trying to find solutions, I thank you, and we will keep going. All right, our next issue, we are changing gears and want to celebrate some good news, which is always good when we have it. We are recognizing June as Pride Month officially in the Senate in the state of Michigan. My colleague, Senator Jeremy Moss, who is the only openly gay senator currently serving, has been working on this issue for many, many years. And it may feel like just recognizing a resolution is a small thing, but it is a moment to celebrate, where we had multiple Republican co-sponsors on the resolution to recognize June as Pride Month. And that is progress. You know, progress is hard and it takes a long time. And I think we have to celebrate the wins when we have them. And I am grateful to our colleagues on both sides of the aisle who recognize that LGBTQ residents of our state are our friends and our neighbors and deserve to be seen. So I was proud to co-sponsor this. And it was a really, really big day and something worth celebrating in the Michigan Senate. So I know there are a lot of events coming up to celebrate Pride, but wanted to share some good news. And, it can't be overstated how much work Senator Moss has done on this issue over the years to push forward. And there's a lot more work to be done, including on our bill to ban conversion therapy on minors. But this is a step in the right direction. And I hope it is one of many more positive steps for all of our residents to let you know that we see you, we hear you, and you are valued and loved. Moving on, we are talking about broadband internet. This week, Governor Whitmer signed an executive directive opening the Office of Michigan High-Speed Internet. And this is really for the first time putting resources behind this effort to expand broadband access throughout our state. In our district here in Oakland County, this isn't a huge issue. There is pretty broad coverage, and whether it's in your home or in a library or in our schools, our residents do have access to broadband, but that's not true for all of the residents of our state. And it is economically holding our state back from people being able to open small businesses. Think about maybe your favorite store on Etsy. That could be something that somebody up north might have a great idea, but doesn't have the broadband internet access to support opening a store or doing live stream videos like this or any of the other things that you need broadband access for. And especially coming out of the pandemic with kids doing remote school from home, how important broadband internet access is. And then on top of that, Senator Rosemary Bayer led the charge of a bill package that will be introduced to support broadband access as well, that I was proud to co-sponsor many of the bills in that package. So more to come, but a quote from Governor Whitmer on this news: "A fully connected Michigan is essential for our state to reach its economic potential in the 21st century global economy." So really great news to see that emphasis be put on to expand broadband access for everybody and for our state moving forward. All right, it's time for my favorite segment, good news from the district. And we are going to start once again with some super great news from the Detroit Zoo. Guests at the Detroit Zoo can now see a baby wallaby, or Joey, born in October to mother Eloise at the 2-acre Australian Outback Adventure. You can see the Joey right here, super cute, sticking out of the pocket. Unfortunately, I cannot hold Noah in a pocket on myself. I have to have a wrap as a human, but it's pretty cool to see this new Joey. So visitors to the Detroit Zoo in Royal Oak can go check that out. Also, zoo staff say first-time mother Eloise is very protective of her Joey, rightfully so. Moms are very protective of their kids. But as we get out in the warmer weather, go make an appointment at the Detroit Zoo and go visit. Next up, this was some pretty great news about collaboration on groups that typically compete with each other. So all three Rochester high schools, Rochester Adams, Rochester, and Stony Creek, led a student-led Tri-High Charity Week and raised $34,950.68 to Common Ground, a local organization that is a 24-hour crisis services agency to help youths, adults, and families in crisis. And there's a quick clip of the big check presentation that I know everybody loves, so check it out.
We are so excited to present this check to Common Ground from Adams, Stony Creek, and Rochester High School.
Who doesn't love a big check presentation? We should have more of them all the time for everything. All right, last up in our good news for this week. This was a challenging year for everybody. We know that, but we wanted to celebrate the Berkeley High School drama program, which put on a performance of Mamma Mia outside this year. And wanted to share some commentary from Berkeley on this. And I think it was just such a fantastic example of the creativity that so many people in our district have shown to kind of power through an unprecedented pandemic and keep bringing joy to the community, which I think is so important. After Grease was canceled last year due to COVID-19, Berkeley was committed to finding a way to safely have a show this year. Students practiced inside while others built the set in the parking lot. As the show approached, students began daily rapid COVID-19 tests to ensure that come showtime, everyone was safe and virus-free. Then in May, it was showtime. The show went on a Saturday night outdoors for family, fans, and enthusiastic supporters ready for a long overdue great show. Congrats to District Drama Coordinator John Hopkins and to all of the student performers for bringing Mamma Mia to life. And here's a quick taste of Mamma Mia outdoors in Berkeley. Yeah, it's hard not to dance to that. Thank you, everybody in Berkeley, for putting that together. That brings us to the end of our news updates and our good news. So we are going to open it up for questions. You know her as the host of Virtual Coffee Hours when I was out on maternity leave, our district constituent services director, Liz Trombley, who is here to ask your questions. So once again, if you have any questions, type them in the chat on whatever platform you're at. Make sure to include your name if that's not obvious in your screen name, what city you are commenting in from, and fire away with your question. Liz, what do we got today?
All right. I just want to say I'm going to listen to ABBA for the rest of the day now. That's like sparked a little bug. We only have one question right now.
About, like the lighting design in that show.
Right? It was amazing. We have one question right now, and it's from Sharon on Facebook. They state, I am very concerned about the GOP efforts to restrict voting access, especially with the requirement to submit a copy of your ID with a request for an absentee ballot. What is the current mood in the Michigan Senate regarding this topic?
Sharon, thanks for the question. I am very concerned as well. So we heard from our election officials during the last election what they needed to improve our elections. And what they asked for across the board was more time to process and potentially count absentee ballots. That's what we saw play out in 2020, where Michigan actually finished its count fairly quickly. But even every hour after the polls close, when we don't have those results, we are the type of people who we want results and we want them really quickly. Kind of each hour that went on, that's where you saw doubt seeded in. That's where people started asking questions. And I think our election officials and our clerks anticipated that and said we should follow the model of other states and be able to process these early. Now, there's a 39 bill package that has been introduced by our Republican colleagues that don't address this issue at all. It is 39 bills that attempt to solve a problem that does not exist. I want to be very clear. I know that is a lot of news out there that says, well, people don't trust the election and people are sending us emails and keep asking questions about the election. Well, there are groups out there that told you to doubt the election. We in our office, we received emails and phone calls that flooded our office from all around the country and the world. We were getting, Liz put an Instagram story together that I still, it's kind of funny, you have to laugh at it. But there was one day where we got emails from, I want to say, every single state in the country, but not our district, not Michigan. So this is an effort that's happening nationwide that is pushed. There are direct copies of bills that have been introduced here in Michigan. And the Heritage Foundation, which is a conservative think tank, did a study and showed that since 2007, there have only been 12, not 12,000, 12 total documented cases of voter fraud in the state of Michigan. 12 since 2007. And there are 39 bills that are up right now to address an issue that does not exist. I am concerned about the bill to require a copy of your ID be mailed to get an application because of the potential for identity theft. This is something that the Attorney General has brought up as a flag. We have seen rampant identity theft and elder abuse over the past few years of people taking advantage of many of our citizens and stealing their identity through phone calls, through phishing attempts. But you can imagine if you have to send a physical copy of your ID in the mail to get an absentee ballot, that is just a huge opportunity for that to be intercepted and for your identity to be stolen. There is already a requirement in the state of Michigan that you need an ID to vote. And if you do not have an ID with you to vote, you have to sign an affidavit verifying your identity. And if that cannot be verified, your ballot does not count. So we already have a process in place to ensure that the person who is voting says who they say they are. And I am opposed to this bill. Now, I know the question was on what is the mood in the Michigan Senate. I am increasingly frustrated that this seems to be the focus and the goal of Majority Leader Mike Shirkey, Senator Ruth Johnson, who was our old Secretary of State, who's run elections, who's seen elections run in our state for many years, that we continue to give air to these bills and these theories that are proven time and time again to be false. So, I'm very confident that if these bills pass, because we do not have a majority of people opposed to them to stop them from passing the Senate, that they will be vetoed by the governor. I know that very confidently, but we will keep everybody up to date on what's happening with these bills. But if you know people in districts that aren't ours that feel very confident in our election process, who support our election workers, one of the most depressing things about this entire process is that we have lifelong public servants who are leaving the profession because they have received death threats, they have received hate mail, and just the lack of attention to facts and reality is going to hurt our elections, not in this increase in voter fraud that doesn't exist, but because we're not going to have poll workers, clerks, election officials who want to do this work if their work isn't valued and they're not being heard.
Yeah. And Joseph on Facebook has a bit of a follow-up comment/question to this. They state, if an ID is required for voting and there are costs associated with getting an ID, then isn't that an illegal form of poll tax?
Joseph, I think you hit it spot on. I mean, I think anything that creates an additional cost or a barrier to voting is a poll tax, and I could see that being challenged in courts. You can think of how many people have access to a printer or a copier or the means to do that. So if you have to go through an extra step to, number one, put your ID at risk, which we've talked about before, and that's where my biggest hang up, outside of the fact that this is completely unnecessary legislation, the risk for identity theft is huge. But yeah, it does create another barrier. And I think that's intentional, is that in 2018, Michiganders voted overwhelmingly, over 66% of Michiganders voted overwhelmingly to expand access to the ballot with Prop 3, including no reason absentee voting for anybody who wants to sign up for that. And a record number of people took advantage of that this year. So the people who've tended to vote absentee in the past are seniors. Seniors have been automatically eligible if you're 65 or above, but now it's open to everybody. And it just makes it that much harder. So Joseph, yes, I could see a challenge in court if it moves. But, as I said, I know the governor will veto this if this moves, but we have heard that the Republican Party via outside parties may try to do a ballot initiative to get some of these things onto the ballot, not with the intent of actually putting them in front of the voters, because as we saw in 2018, voters said loud and clear, we want more access to the ballot, not less. But the intent would be to collect enough signatures, get it approved as a ballot initiative, but then the legislature, through a legal loophole that currently exists, could adopt that ballot initiative and turn it into law without it going to the ballot, and it would be veto proof. So the governor could not veto it. And this is a situation whereby 4% of the state's population can effectively create a law if they are in line with the majority in the legislature. So that is something that, I think we have to take a hard look at, because it is extreme minority rule if it's 4% of the population has the ability to make a law with no recourse. So we'll keep everybody posted, but that's where we are at on election bills.
All right, switching to another incredibly important topic. Ryan on Facebook asked, what is the governor / state doing to bring Danny Fenster home?
Thanks, Ryan. Yeah, for those who don't know, we spoke about this last week, but Danny Fenster is a journalist from Huntington Woods, actually a graduate of Berkeley High School, who has been editor of a publication in Myanmar for the past few years. Myanmar had a coup where the military, through a coup, overtook the government. And since then, back in February, I believe it was, they have been detaining and arresting journalists, people who have been speaking out against what is happening in Myanmar. And Danny was on his way to the airport to come back to the United States to visit family and friends, and was detained at the airport a few weeks ago. My colleagues in both the House and the Senate in Oakland County, on a bipartisan basis, Republicans and Democrats, put together a letter that was led by State Rep Regina Weiss to encourage Secretary of State Blinken and the State Department to do everything in their power to bring Danny home. I think what is so important, especially for those of us who are Americans, regardless of where you are in the world, journalism is not a crime. And that is a value of the United States. And we will continue to push with our colleagues on the State Department. I know Senator Peters' office is working on this. I know Congressman Levin's office is working on this. And for anybody who wants to help, we just need attention around this issue. So Ryan, I see that you've got the icon for your profile picture. There's a hashtag that we've been using, hashtag Bring Danny Home. So if this is concerning to anybody, feel free to please tweet about it, share about it on Facebook. We need to get attention around this so that the State Department can leverage the pressure from the American public to put that pressure on officials in Myanmar to bring Danny home and bring him home safely.
Yeah. Okay. That's all the questions I'm seeing now. So over to you.
Perfect. All right. We'll do one last call for questions and I'll bring Liz on if I see anything pop up. But want to thank everybody for joining us this summer. We are going to start going door to door to tell more people about this virtual coffee hours that we do. I think coming out of the pandemic, we realized this is a really great way to connect with people and let you ask questions of me directly. And we can reach a lot more people by streaming than we can necessarily in an in-person coffee hour. So we will start to get back to in-person events. So stay tuned on our Facebook page for more of those, but we will look to stream those as well. So if you want to sign up to volunteer, you can send us an email. I'll put our email address up so you have that. And you can join us this summer and come. We're going to do easy doors. If you haven't gone door to door before, I know it can be really intimidating, but we just want to leave these super cute flyers with people to let them know about our virtual coffee hours. I've run into some people in the community who don't know about this, who don't follow us on Facebook, who don't know that we do this. So shoot us an email right there. We drop the email address. You can join our team this summer to let neighbors know to join us. We're hoping to expand this and keep it as a regular every Friday the Senate is in session event. We have toyed around with replaying them on the weekends for people who aren't available to join us during work hours, but really appreciate all of you for being so engaged as always. And with that, I will let you get on with your weekend. So make sure to wear sunscreen, stay hydrated, and happy Pride